Hello, good evening, everybody. Welcome to our Tech Tuesday. And we started last week talking about the brain and how we can feed it, because this little supercomputer up here is quite a hungry little guy, and it requires a lot of nutrients and a lot of nutrition in order to keep it going. And obviously, it's one of the first things that develops when we develop way back in the womb, when we're just a pile of little cells. The brain and the nervous system are amongst the first things to be developed over there. And it's got to last us until we don't need it anymore. Fortunately, some people get to the stage where they can't remember who they are. Some days I have that problem, but as we get older, obviously things slow down and there's changes. And the brain, just like any other organ, is one of those things that changes with time. My lighting is not that hot over here. Looks a little bit better. So let me share my screen. And last week we covered a little bit about what the brain is, what it does, how it works, all the rest. And this week we're going to cover a little bit more about how we can feed it, what we need to feed it, because the brain is quite an amazing part of the body, which, in my opinion, we take it for granted. I know I take mine for granted because it's a muscle. It's also a blob of fat. And it requires a huge amount of energy. Just like any supercomputer, requires a huge amount of energy to operate. So we need to be able to feed it correctly. Again, like any supercomputer, it needs the right conditions. Supercomputer will be in a big room that's air conditioned and very carefully climate controlled and all the rest. And they service it on a regular basis, make sure that there's no bugs or anything funny like that. And our brain needs to be the same thing. So we're going to get over here. So the first question is, what nutrients do we actually need? We know we've got to feed the brain. We've got to feed our bodies too, but we can afford to put all sorts of junk into our body. And I say that lightly because your body will be relatively forgiving, but your brain, not quite so much. So the first thing we're going to talk about is flavonoids. Flavonoids are a category of polyphenolic compounds with numerous effects on cognition and behavior through a variety of mechanisms, including neurotransmitters. I'm going to be using some big words. I apologize for that, but I'll try and break them down a little bit. So your polyphenols is something unique that was discovered by Neolife, and we head up a group called FENRIC, which is a group that studies specifically what polyphenols are and how they work and what their effects are. And these things work through a lot of different mechanisms. And the neurotransmitters are the things that we spoke about last week. And it's a little bit like, I think I likened it to the copper wire that you would use for your phone system. Even a cell phone network, you've got to go between cells to get a message through. And this is what the neurotransmitters do. They allow a signal to go from there through the different synapses, through the different neurotransmitters to be shunted off to the correct area. Very much like a telephone system or a cell phone system, because you punch in a series of numbers and that directs where the call is going to go to. And this is what the neurotransmitters do as well. They direct where the signal is going to, because you don't want your brain to tell your little finger to move and your big toe moves instead. Similarly, you don't want your brain to tell your thumb to move, but your little finger moves instead. So you've got to have the correct neurotransmitters over there and obviously make sure that they're working. Now, researchers have proposed that some flavonoids act to increase acetylcholine and serotonin levels, and others impact the GABA and glutamate systems. Don't worry about the funny initials. Just know that it's there for a specific reason. Flavonoids have a protective effect and have been found to positively impact memory, learning, and mood. Some of the richest sources of flavonoids are tea, fruits, especially the berries and citrus, legumes, and kale. Now, out of that little list, how many of those things are you consuming on a daily basis? Folate is the next thing. Folate you'll find in this group of foods over here. Folate is essential for proper brain development and function, which is why they will tell somebody who's wanting to fall pregnant or somebody who is pregnant. In fact, they should be taking it before they fall pregnant to take folic acid. Now, folic acid is one of the B vitamins. Folic acid is vital for the development of the brain and the neurosystem and the neurosystem, the nerve system. And one of the issues, if somebody has not had enough folic acid, they will develop a thing called spina bifida. Now, spina bifida, sometimes you don't even know you've got it. Sometimes it can result in complete paraplegia. And sometimes spina bifida is basically one of your lower vertebrae that doesn't seal, so the spinal cord is open. And in some cases, to the extent that when the baby is born, you can literally look through a hole in their back and see the spine and the spinal cord. This is not a good thing, and that requires surgery immediately. So through technology these days and scans, they can pretty much pick it up very early on. So most of these things can be sorted out before birth, but it does still happen that things fall through the cracks and baby can be born with the spina bifida, which might mean no problems, or it could mean that they're paralyzed. Folate is necessary for the proper synthesis of neurotransmitters, serotonin, dopamine, and epinephrine. Like with any of these things, any nutrients, if your body's not absorbing it and is not able to utilize what's there, it's pretty pointless. Think of your car. You fill up the tank with petrol, but you disconnect the petrol pump. That's the fuel pump that's in your engine. You've got a tank full of fuel. You can maybe crank the engine because the spark is going, but you're probably not going to get very far. And in fact, I don't think your car will even move if the engine cannot get fuel. Yes, you can take a syringe or a teaspoon and put a little bit of fuel in the carburetor, if vehicles still have those things these days. I'm dating myself over here. And it'll go for as long as that fuel is there. But if there's no more fuel coming through, your engine and car, you're not going to go very far. Same with food and nutrients. If your body can't absorb and utilize them, you're not going to go very far. The inadequate levels of folate have been associated with depression and cognitive impairment. And there again, your B vitamins, your folate, your folic acid. And folic acid is probably one of the cheapest supplements that you can buy at the pharmacy. They virtually give them away because they are so cheap. So don't let anybody tell you they can't afford it, because it's literally a couple of rand. Good sources of folate include things like dark leafy greens, legumes, nuts, and eggs. And we can see in this little picture over here what they're talking about. So there's your broccoli, your kale, your Brussels sprouts, etc. All your dark leafy greens, even lettuce. Folate and folic acid are terms often used interchangeably, but folic acid is the form of folate commonly found in fortified foods and dietary supplements, and is actually more bioavailable than folate found in foods. Here, we'll see a good indication of why you need to supplement, because while you can get it from your food, you probably are not getting enough, specifically as you get older, and specifically at developmental stage when a woman is trying to fall pregnant. The folate daily value, and DV, the initials DV stand for daily value, for healthy adults is 400 micrograms of dietary folate equivalents. And that means equivalent to what you would find in food, which is equivalent to 240 micrograms of folic acid. So a lot of that dietary equivalent becomes waste product in the body, but the folic is the pure source of what you're looking for. However, since folate is so important for proper brain development, the DV for pregnant women is 600 micrograms DFE and 500 micrograms DFE for women who are breastfeeding. Because remember, even after baby is born, they are reliant very much on mom for their nutrition. And what mom eats, baby gets, as long as she's breastfeeding. With formula, different story, and you'd have to check the ingredients and see what's in there. But obviously, as has always been recommended, breast is best. I do realize there are cases where breastfeeding isn't possible for numerous different reasons, but if at all possible, go for the breastfeeding and make sure that mom is getting the correct nutrition. As long as baby's breastfeeding, she needs to keep her nutrition at beyond optimal. Vitamin B6 is the next thing. And B6 is involved in over 140 coenzymatic functions, but is particularly known for its role in synthesizing the neurotransmitters like dopamine, serotonin, and GABA. It helps regulate the communication between the neurons by influencing the GABA and the glutamate levels, keeping the neuronal activity balanced. Remember, nature loves balance. If there's too much of one thing, there's got to be a compensation somewhere else. So there's always going to be that happy medium, and we've got to keep that as good as possible. Sources of B6 include fish like salmon and tuna, poultry, and beef liver. Again, look at that little lot. How much of those food groups have you had today? I can say out of there, I've had a bit of salmon oil and I've had chicken, but I haven't had beef liver because I do not like beef liver. The DV for B6 is 1.7 milligrams, though the recommendation for pregnant and lactating women goes up to 1.9 milligrams and 2 milligrams respectively. Because with your lactating woman, baby is now growing, so it needs a lot more nutrients. B12 is the other thing. B12 is known for its roles in energy production, DNA synthesis, and red blood cell formation. And that is where you will find if people are anemic, they're not getting sufficient red blood cell formation. So maybe put them on some B12, or preferably B complex, because then their body can use whatever it needs. It also helps neurons maintain their myelin sheath, which is critical for normal nerve signal transmission. Now, your myelin sheath would be more or less like the rubber covering on an electric cable. Think about it. You've got your extension cord, you put your plug in the wall, and as long as Eskom is working, you switch it on, but there's no rubber covering. All you've got is your copper wires all curled up nicely, leading to wherever the electricity is supposed to go to. This is great. What happens if you touch that? You will develop a very spiky hairdo very quickly if you don't die instantly. If you put the rubber covering on there, you can pick it up while the power is going through. It might be a little bit warm, but you can pick it up, you can move around with it. And that's what the myelin sheath does around your nerves. It protects them. Without the myelin sheath, you have a short circuit of note. With the sheath on there, everything flows through nicely. B12 is naturally present primarily in animal products, including meat, seafood, eggs, and dairy. So by looking at that, you can tell that you're, in most cases, vegetarians, unless they are eating eggs and dairy. But specifically, your vegans are falling very far short as far as their B12 is concerned. So they need to supplement. For this reason, vegetarians and vegans are more susceptible to suboptimal B12 levels. B12 deficiency is also more common among the elderly due to declining absorption. Remember, as we get older, so our stomach acid becomes less, and therefore digestion is not optimal. So by increasing your vitamin B12, you will increase the acid balance in your stomach, which means digestion should be significantly better. Eating fortified foods or using supplements can help people meet the 2.4 microgram DV, which is 2.6 for pregnant and 2.8 micrograms for lactating women. B vitamins are clearly important to proper brain functioning and restoring adequate nutrient status. By supplementing with folic acid, both by itself and with the other B vitamins, this has been shown to be effective in helping reduce age-related cognitive decline. Now, I'm sure you'll agree that people like, sorry, I'm just adjusting my camera over here, Charlie and Jerry are probably taking sufficient vitamin B, because I don't think we can note very much cognitive decline in those two gentlemen. And they would be generally considered elderly. I would say 82 and 83 is considered elderly. In fact, several studies indicate that supplementing with a combination of vitamin B6, B12, and folic acid acts synergistically to improve motor control and help reduce occasional anxiety and stress-related conditions, which is why it's always recommended to take vitamin B when you're stressed or in highly stressful situations, like certain jobs. Our next fun one is vitamin D. Vitamin D plays a vital role in early life neuronal development and continues to be necessary to protect the adult brain. Remember, most of these nutrients should start from before conception, because most times health develops from that first cell. When the first two cells come together, that is where DNA starts, RNA starts, and your future health starts right there at development or at conception. There are numerous vitamin D receptors throughout the brain, and vitamin D helps to regulate calcium homeostasis and causes changes in neurotransmitters like glutamate, dopamine, and serotonin, once again. And this is why we have vitamin D in our CalMag, because it helps the calcium to be absorbed better. Vitamin D deficiency has been linked to numerous problems like cognitive impairment and depression. Now, where is the main source of vitamin D? It's otherwise known as the sunshine vitamin. Look at the average old age home. In fact, look at the average hospital patient. Where do they spend their day? Outside on the beach, in the garden, or tucked up, bundled up. And I always remember growing up with watching my grandparents at the local old age home, sitting inside on the sun porch, but not a lot of sun coming through there. It was just nice and warm. And even on a sunny day, dressed in a long sleeve shirt or long jersey, not seeing the sunshine. You go outside, you put a hat on. Even today, you see a lot of people outside on the beach. They've got the long sleeves, they've got the hats, they're covered in sunscreen. They're not getting vitamin D because their body isn't able to utilize it. And then they wonder why they get mushy brains and they can't remember anything. This is why. Though our bodies synthesize vitamin D when our skin is exposed to sunlight, the amount we can produce decreases with age. Again, old age is not recommended, meaning that older populations are at higher risk of vitamin D deficiency. And we will go over this again. You'll see virtually any medical professional will tell you, you don't need to supplement because you can get everything you need from your diet. This is true. However, the question is, are you getting everything you need from your diet? I know what I'm not getting in my diet. I know what foods I'm not eating. So therefore, I supplement. For that very simple reason that I know I need the nutrients and I know I'm not getting sufficient from the food that I am eating. And again, diet is what you eat. Nutrition is what your body absorbs. And I'll just repeat again about the fuel story. You can have a tank full of fuel, but unless it's getting into the engine, nothing is going to happen. We can have a tank full of food, but unless that food is broken down and the nutrients go to where they need to be, nothing is going to happen. The DV for vitamin D is 20 micrograms, and most dietary sources of vitamin D are from animal sources again, including fatty fish like salmon and tuna, egg yolks and cheese, although some is found in certain mushrooms as well. Omega-3, probably one of my more favorite supplements. The human brain is about 50 to 60% lipids or fats, of which 35% are omega-3 polyunsaturated fatty acids. Very big word, don't stress about it, but 35% of your brain is omega-3. How much fish did you eat today? Omega-3s support neuronal preservation, promote cognition, and help protect against neurodegeneration, which is a very big word to say that it helps to protect against your brain fading or shrinking with age. Omega-3 deficiency has been linked with increased risk for cognitive decline, depression, inattention or difficulty focusing, and other challenges. Think about children who stare off into the distance. They're not focused on the work in front of them. Sometimes they're not even focused on a TV program. They don't read because they're missing this focus. So for kids who are studying, for kids who are writing exams, for anybody for that matter who's studying or writing exams, I would highly recommend pushing omega-3. You can't overdose on it, but take slightly higher levels to help, because your brain, when it's working, is burning off energy. So it needs that food put back again, needs those fats put back again. Omega-3s are essential fatty acids, meaning our bodies cannot manufacture them. So they need to be obtained through diet. If it's non-essential, your body can pretty much manufacture it from the raw ingredients that it gets in your diet. But if it's essential, it means it's got to get it from your food. And if it's not getting it from your food, you'll have to give it in the form of a supplement. Sorry. Many studies have shown that omega-3 supplementation can have cognitive benefits, including improved learning, better memory, and increased neurotransmitter release. Now, I can't talk about the neurotransmitter release part, but certainly my learning and my memory have improved dramatically over the years that I've been having extra omega-3. And the purer the form, the more effective the end result. Because in the past I've had other omegas, and they worked. It was definitely better than having nothing. But when I started taking our improved formula, our ultra processed or ultra strong version of the omega-3, my memory and my focus increased dramatically. And I often say to people, I could feel the difference. Now, I've been taking it for so long that I'm not feeling the difference that much anymore. But I do know that without it, I would not be able to answer a lot of your questions as quickly as I do. This has made a huge, huge difference in my life. The next thing is a thing called choline. Acetylcholine is a prominent excitatory neurotransmitter in the brain, playing roles in muscle function, memory, and attention. Don't worry about the big fancy words, but excitatory simply means excited. Synthesizing acetylcholine requires an essential nutrient called choline. Our bodies can produce some choline, but not sufficient, so more needs to be obtained from your diet. Once again, we can say, you can get everything you need from your diet, but are you getting enough? Eggs, cruciferous vegetables, peanuts, and liver are particularly rich sources of choline. Out of that, I can say I've probably had one of those things today. Not all four of them. The DV for choline is 550 milligrams, but a 2015 to 2018 National Health and Nutrition Exam survey found the average US daily intake was only 284 milligrams for women and 390 milligrams for men. Were they falling short? Oh yeah. Only 6% of women and 11% of men consumed enough choline to exceed the adequate intake. That's quite a scary statistic. And now we're going to give probably some good news quickly before I run out of time. How do we give our brain a boost? It's like your car battery. It's dead, and you need to get your car started. So what do? You find another brain or another battery, and you give it a boost, and it starts, and it works, and it recharges. But we can't really plug something into our brain and get it kickstarted that way. When people say they can't function without their morning cup of coffee, they are usually referring to the mental and physical boost from the caffeine it contains. There's not too many people who are going to say, oh, I can't function without my decaf in the morning. Because if there's no caffeine, it's not going to have the same effect. It might smell like coffee and taste like coffee, but it ain't going to give you the kick. Caffeine consumption is extremely widespread. An estimated 85% of US adults consume caffeine, mainly in the beverage form as coffee, then tea, or an energy drink. And those are the scary things. It has been shown to enhance the physical performance, improve mood, and boost cognitive measures like working memory, attention, and reaction time. And I know when I'm focusing on putting together one of these things, I need a cup of coffee every so often. I need to be able to get up and move around, and I need that boost of the caffeine just to help me to focus. Whether it's a cup of coffee, whether it's a cup of tea, I need that boost. Caffeine works by impacting the neurotransmitter action. It blocks the binding of adenosine, which is an inhibitory neurotransmitter that causes feelings of tiredness. If you watch people, they haven't had a cup of coffee for a few hours and they're going, oh, I'm so tired. I can't keep my eyes open. This also indirectly promotes the release of excitatory neurotransmitters like acetylcholine, glutamate, and dopamine, helping stimulate the associated feelings of happiness, motivation, and focus. Which is why people often jokingly say they feel so much better focused and much happier after they've had their cup of coffee. Now you know why. I think I'm going to stop there because we've got about 5 minutes left, but I don't want to get too carried away over here. Stop my sharing. So from next week, we'll kick in with the importance of sleep, which, as Jim McAfee has done a presentation before, which he titled Vitamin S, because sleep is that important. So your brain is working hard all the time. It also needs to have a break, just like the rest of your body. So does anybody have any questions or comments before I stop the recording?